We know what our position is about Palestinian liberation. We can get out in the streets and say, no, not another nickel, not another dime,
Yeah.
no more money for this genocidal government,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want to use our resources for jobs, education, housing, childcare, boom. Those are the things that we want to spend money on. We don't want these wars. We don't want this, God, needless suffering.
Step with care towards the precipice. Hold my hand through the dark. See the light, it is breaking. We're mothering new world.
Hello and welcome to Mothering New Worlds, a podcast about revolutionary caregiving and world building in the midst of societal collapse and rebirth. I'm your host, Bianca Mabute-Louie. I'm an author, a sociologist, and your thought mother for this journey. And I have conversations with folks who show us another world is not only possible, it's already here. So for today's episode, we have Karina Garcia, a Chicano organizer and popular educator who has been fighting for a better world since she was 17 years old as a high school student in California. From El Barrio in New York City to the border areas of Texas, she has helped lead a diversity of campaigns against landlord abuses, wage theft, and police brutality, as well as fights for reproductive justice, immigrant rights, and student financial aid reform. Karina herself comes from a mixed status family. Her parents are Mexican immigrants, and her father migrated to the U.S. by himself when he was just 16 years old. You might recognize Karina Garcia's name because she actually ran for vice president with her running mate Claudia de la Cruz in the 2024 presidential elections with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. She is a founder of the Justice Center in El Barrio in New York City and is a member of the Central Committee of the Party for Socialism and Liberation. I really appreciated this conversation with Karina. We talk quite a bit about PSL in this episode, so full transparency, I'm not a member of the party, but I do consider myself a friend of our local chapter. And I think one thing I took away from our conversation is how being part of a political organization, be it a party, a neighborhood group, a mutual aid network, or any collective, coordinated effort with a shared politic and vision of the world, allows you, in Karina's words, to punch up. And I think Karina really challenged me in this conversation to think about the capacity we have as the people, as the masses, to rule and govern ourselves, but also how that requires organizational principle and strategy. Another thing I'll preface is that Karina uses the term our class quite a bit in this episode. And if you're unfamiliar with that language, I'm going to give a very, very, very cursory overview of Marxist theory, which is the political lineage that Karina comes from. She talks about it in the episode. Basically, when she says our class, I understand it in reference to Marxism, where society is divided into social class, which is determined by each person's relationship to production, meaning their relationship to land, to resources, to their own labor, to property. In Marxist theory, what you need to know for this episode is that there are two classes that are created by capitalism. One is the bourgeoisie, or the ruling capitalist class. Those are the folks who own the means of production, the 1% who own businesses, land, and capital. And two, the exploited proletariat/working class. So that's everybody else who must sell their labor to survive under this system. In capitalism, the working class is inherently exploited, meaning capitalists extract their labor, meaning they pay them, the workers, less than the actual value of their labor or what they're worth. So when Karina says our class throughout this episode, I interpret it as the broader working class under Marxist theory in which she identifies herself as part of. Okay, so thank you for listening to this preamble. I promise we will get to this episode in no time. But again, just a reminder, Mothering New Worlds is an independent podcast. If you like what you hear, help me out by sharing with your friends, rating, subscribing, following, leaving comments. New episodes come out every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And I'm at Mothering New Worlds on Instagram and Substack. Here is Karina Garcia on Mothering New Worlds. I want to just recall back to when I first met you in person. Was in Houston. It was a event titled Blame Billionaires, Not Immigrants. Approaching the 2024 presidential elections when you ran with your running mate, Claudia de la Cruz, with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And I remember, the event was incredible. You were incredible. But specifically, your baby was so freshly new. I think not even a few months old. And I was just so amazed by one, how much we as mothers do and are capable of, but two, just like your sense of revolutionary optimism talking to us in Houston, while also just all the labor seen and unseen that makes that moment happen, you know? And so I was, when I was starting this podcast, I was like, for sure I want to talk to Karina because I feel like she probably has a thought or two about mothering and revolution and all of these things. So could we start just by having you introduce yourself, a little bit about your personal background, your history?
Yeah, I will. I wanted to say a little bit about that too. So I went back and I found a picture of us at that event.
Oh, really? Oh,
So
yeah.
you're a little toddler,
Yeah.
like maybe not even a year old, right? Like you were
Yeah.
carrying him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was running when I was running for vice president with Claudia in the Vote Socialist campaign. I was pregnant. So 2024 I was pregnant and I was campaigning. And then when I met you, it was already February in Houston.
Oh,
It was the height of like Trump's attacks and coming
yeah.
back, and it was so important for people to mobilize.
Yeah.
And so the comrades in Texas invited me, and so yeah, I did a speaking tour in Texas with the baby, and she was about like 5 months. Yeah,
Wow.
I remember because she was just right towards the end of it. When I went on the speaking tour, we went to, God, it was like a week long, and I did like 6 different cities. I was in Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Waco, Dallas, and then I ended up in the Rio Grande Valley at the end. And then from there, we went to Mexico City, and we were sort of meeting with different activists who were there. And I remember the baby started, like, she just surprised me. She wasn't eating foods yet, solids yet. Then I was like eating a sandwich and the avocado fell. And I was like, okay, I guess she's eating.
She was ready.
Now.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready yet, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So you're like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, the milestones are happening on your speaking tour. It's wild.
Yeah, and by the time I got to the Rio Grande Valley, the activists that were there were already trying to give her like little sopita. And I was like, oh my God, this is like her first food. You know, she had like a piece of avocado, and now she's having a little sopita and potato, and it is very sweet. Yeah.
That's so special.
We knew that campaign was a unique campaign, but it just kept getting more and more special.
Yeah.
The comrades were saying I might be the only vice presidential candidate to do so when pregnant.
Yeah. What was that like? I mean, we can jump right into it. I mean, I can't even imagine like doing one of those, specifically the vice presidential candidate part, but what was it like having, you know, all of these things happening at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's like, that was not in the cards. None of it was in the cards.
I love it.
But it's like responding to things as they're happening. And you know, I've been an activist and an organizer since I was 17, you know, so this is my life. Like, it's not gonna, I've struggled to find ways to contribute as much as I can, however I can. And that includes, you know, like when I'm a mom and the decision to go forward with both the pregnancy and with the candidacy, the campaign, you know, like they were very much, I had to think about them, and it wasn't automatic, you know, they were decisions that I had to really consider. And I felt like I could do it. Like I wasn't doing it alone. That's the thing. I wasn't doing it alone. I was doing it with Claudia. I was doing it with my comrades. And so it was different. It wasn't something that I had been like wanting necessarily. It was, you know, like you just take up different tasks in the party, and you try to push yourself into things that you do, a lot of things that you don't realize that you could do. And so, like, I think the challenge for women's leadership has always been, like, one, overcoming the way that we're pigeonholed, and then also overcoming the pigeonholes that we put for ourselves.
You said you started organizing as a youth. What were some of the early ways that you became politicized?
Like I said, I was born in California, Southern California, daughter of Mexican immigrants. My mom went to Long Beach with her family, my grandmother and my tias when she was a kid. And then my dad, he traveled to the United States when he was 16 years old by himself. So they met in Long Beach, and that's where I grew up. And then my mom passed away when I was 5 years old in a car accident. And then from there we moved to Fontana. And we grew up in Fontana, which is like very, very different from Long Beach. It's kind of like the town and the city like for both of these experiences. On the one hand, my mom's side is from Mexico City, huge city, you know, and my side is from a very small town in Jalisco. It's very rural, small little pueblito. And so I spent kind of, because I was, thankfully, I was very close to my maternal grandmother. I spent a lot of time with her. And I kind of, like, people ask me where I'm from, and I would say Long Beach and Fontana, because the truth is I was going back and forth a lot. And I was lucky that my family was really close. And I had my dad's side, you know, my dad's like the oldest of like 12. And my mom's side is a smaller family, but we're together. They stay together. And so I grew up with lots of cousins and aunts and uncles always, whether I was in Long Beach or whether I was in Fontana and Inland Empire. But I had the experience of seeing what it's like in these different places. Fontana being a big trucking town, like a commuter city, being more rural, and then an underdeveloped. That's part of the reason we were able to move from Long Beach and buy a house there, is because it was underdeveloped. And then on the other hand, Long Beach in the 90s, you know, inner city, very, very different. And being able to sort of see and navigate all these different experiences with my grandmother, really, those experiences were very formative. You know, like my grandmother was a fast food worker, had an accident at work, and she wasn't able to work after that. She had a serious surgery. So she was living in Long Beach, and I would go with her to the public hospital, social security, you know, the welfare system, and I was with her all the time, you know, and seeing her navigate these systems. And she, you know, she would say, no hablo inglés, I don't speak English, pero me defiendo. You know, like, I don't speak English, but I defend myself. And I saw that growing up, you know, her defending herself. Of course, when I was a kid, it was like more, those things are stigmatized and you feel kind of shame about your situation, you know. But now I look at it with so much pride. I'm like, wow, you know, my grandmother was able to overcome so many things. You know, she's a survivor of domestic violence. She's an immigrant woman. She raised her kids here, basically, from Mexico and then to California. And being able to be with her as she faces class systems, I think it was I feel very fortunate that I was able to be with my grandmother and see her go through those things. So those are that's the experience, that's where I come from. The things that form me, being able to travel with my grandmother to Mexico City, seeing a huge city and seeing her navigate that too, you know, and going with her to the tianguis, the big markets, and like just seeing her do her thing. And I guess those things sort of showed me a bigger world than where I was living at the time, and how to be able to find community in those spaces too, you know. And being with her allowed me to see working class solidarity, you know, being around immigrant women, how kindness from each other, you know. And like, we didn't have money, we were going around public transportation. You know what it's like in Texas. It's not New York City. It's like one of the only places in the country that has good public transportation, and it still has problems. But when you're in places like Texas and California, all over the country, public transportation means you're waiting for hours. You're getting nowhere. If you don't have a car, you're not going nowhere. But you learn a lot from being out in the world and seeing your family overcome obstacles, and then later learning that those obstacles are so unnecessary. Unnecessarily humiliating. The things that really formed me and filled me with contempt for the system.
What you saw your grandmother going through was avoidable, right? And I'm also curious, you know, you said that's where you first saw working class solidarity. I'd love to hear more about that.
Definitely. Well, because, you know, we lived in Section 8 in Long Beach. People help each other. Working class people, we help each other. Like, we just know that we're all going to be in different situations. And my grandmother was a very, like, friendly person. She made friends. I think part of it, it's funny, I learned these things later on in life when I, like, experienced class. You know, like, when I was growing up, I was in a working class neighborhood, right? I didn't really think about the rich, the bourgeoisie, capitalism. I didn't think about those things. What I saw in front of me was machismo and patriarchy, So that's where I initially fought against that, right? And then when I go to college, to Columbia, one of like the most bougie schools, and I start to see, shit, we were poor. I didn't consider myself poor, you know? But when I saw them, I realized like, damn, we were. And then when I learned more about capitalism, and you know, they're rich because we're poor, and they wouldn't be rich without the suffering of millions of people. And so like learning about the inequality of the system and the fact that it's designed that way, and that you can't really fix it from the inside. Like one of the early political experiences that I had when I went to college, like first of all, going to college, I was like won the lottery, right? That was like an impossible thing for somebody from my neighborhood. But I won the lottery, and I went. So of course I'm like, I need to do something. I need to do something to be able to like, just, I'm grateful, you know? And so like one of the things that I did early on is I joined this group that was United Students Against Sweatshops. And I thought like, this is cool. These kids are like trying to do something for workers in the global south, basically, right? They're like trying to use their power as students to say to big corporations like Nike, we're going to use our power as students in solidarity with the workers in El Salvador, in the Dominican Republic, in Mexico, so that they improve their working conditions there, right? The workers are struggling, and we as students can put pressure on our administration to put pressure on Nike to improve the living conditions of the workers there. Right? So that was like perfect for me. I thought, this is great. You know, I can use this special moment where I have this power as a student to do something for my community, right? But of course, under capitalism, there's no such thing as a good capitalist. It can't be, because even if you were to like, and this is what a comrade challenged me on, they said, well, what if you win? What if you guys win? You win everything you want, and you turn Nike into a good capitalist. What happens under capitalism, under the system? Well, what it means is that the investors who are investing in Nike, their profits are going down, right? Or they're not getting the highest rate, because it's not just about getting a profit, it's the rate of profit. So they're going to take their money and they're going to go to a worse corporation, a more exploitative corporation, you know? And they're going to put all of their money there. So now Reebok, whatever, is now bigger. It's bigger than Nike, worse, more exploitative, and that's the system. Right? So it shows you that you can actually be a good capitalist. The system itself is exploitative, and it only survives by impoverishing and having a race to the bottom for the working class in this country and the working class in the whole world. So those are things that I learned in college. That then when I go back and think about my life, and I start to think about all of these like indignities that we're forced to live with, right? Like the idea that our communities are called illegal, that they're like, that they talk as if they're the problem when they know damn well they need us. They know damn well that immigrants take care of their parents, their children, feed them, like provide all of the wealth of society. We build their homes, build their skyscrapers, they steal from our countries. Like, the only reason people are here is because of the U.S. foreign policy that has created so much instability, inequality in our own countries. And it's not even a secret. You can trace the U.S. interventions in trade policies that force people to migrate. And then when they migrate, those people are vilified. But the corporations that push them out of their homes, that dispossess them, those are not vilified.
I mean, I feel every word you're saying. I'm curious, like, in that particular story, when your comrade challenged you, right? Because there's no good capitalist. I'm curious if there are people who push back, right? I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I'm just like, you can't be, even if you want to be.
Yeah.
Because you won't survive.
Yeah. And I'm curious, though, like, do people ever push back and say, like, well, we still have to, right, like, fight for the workers in those systems? How do you navigate kind of this, like, contradiction, if you will? And maybe that's just what it means to live here. This contradiction of, like, reform to really make unlivable conditions a little bit better, while knowing that, like, in the end, this all needs to burn down and go to shit.
Yes. I wouldn't, if the comrades were standing on the sidelines, not engaged in the struggle, just saying, that's not going to work, that's not going to work, that's not going to work, you know, that would not have been attracted to the party. The only reason I was interested in what these people were saying is because they were also at the protests. They were also at the demonstrations. And not just this type of demonstration, because they work on this issue, all the demonstrations. So it's actually really, what you're saying is really important and really pivotal for activists, for revolutionaries, that you have to be involved in the struggle, that being involved in fighting for reforms, being the best fighters for reforms, are the things that actually build the confidence of our class to fight for more. So to the contrary, being on the sideline and just critiquing the campaigns of others, that is not an attractive strategy to win over people to socialism, to fight for more. The truth is to be shoulder to shoulder with people on all of these different issues that they're fighting for, and being good, solid fighters, and pushing also the questions, the questions too, so that we're not just fighters, we're thinkers and fighters. Right? But we can't just be thinkers. We can't be people who identify the problems and do not actually put some skin in the game and organize. And so I think for me, that was definitely the thing that caught my attention about the PSL, even though it was really small. Joined the party in 2006. It was there was 10 of us in New York City. Not anymore. Now we're all over the country, and the liberation centers popping up like daily. But back then it was small. But it had, the people who were involved had the right attitude and the right orientation about being involved in the different struggles. And I remember it was impressive to me because I was already doing student organizing on campus, but it's so segmented, right? And these people do this environmental, and environmental is not workers, and workers is not women. So there's all that stuff, right? But I remember these comrades, it was December, there was a transit worker strike in New York City. And it was cold, and I had just gotten into New York, so I was freezing. And I remember these comrades, they were going to the picket lines, and 6 a.m, freezing cold, going to the picket lines. And they weren't passing around like a little paper that just says, join the PSL, make a revolution. No, they were out where the workers were, saying, this is why you should support the transit worker strike. This is what the workers are fighting for, and trying to build support for them. And that to me was like, wow, that's not opportunism. That's like, they're making a contribution. Even though they're small, they're making a contribution. And like, I want to be around people like that.
Yeah. You started mentioning New York, and I like to ground my conversations in place too. And I hear the Long Beach, the Fontana connection, and I'm curious how long you've been in New York, and if we can just kind of share more about what it's like organizing, caregiving, mothering, doing this revolutionary work where you are.
Well, I've been in New York. I moved to New York when I was 18
for college.
And I've basically been in New York now 23 years or something like that. The things that I like, that I'm drawn to about New York, is the ease of the mobility, having a walkable city, the public spaces. I really appreciate the public parks and being able to take public transportation there. The culture there, I live in Queens, an immigrant city, we have, I don't know how many different languages in our city. It's like huge. Every weekend there's like a different, in the summer, every weekend it's a different nations, like Independence Day, right? And so that's a real privilege to be able to be exposed to so many different peoples and cultures and languages. And then as a mom, the challenge now, what used to be a plus, the public transportation, is kind of the challenge now, just in the sense that it's difficult to get on the subway with a stroller, right? There's hardly any elevators. It's just you right in Manhattan. So it becomes more difficult when you have kids able to manage the city. You basically stay where you live. When you're a mom, Well, those are the challenges, and that there is, you're tight. You're tight, and you're all together. But thankfully we have public parks and public and libraries that I really appreciate. God, I appreciate it as a mom even more. I feel like those free libraries is like my lifeline.
No, the library. The library is my babysitter. Not that I leave my child there, but it's like, you just get to sit, just sit and just play with that. So you're based in New York. You've done a lot of organizing there. I would love to hear more, a little bit of I've been asking people like the lineage that makes you you. And so you talked about your grandmother. She sounds incredible. I'm curious just also your political lineage, right? If you could talk a little bit about even like your organizing lore and your political lineages and histories that make you who you are today.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, I think Marxism is
Mm.
my political lineage, and I think it was very impactful for me early on. In the PSL we have our candidacy education. Everybody like thinkers and fighters. We can't just be fighting, but we
Yeah.
actually want to understand more deeply the world and why these problems occur, right? And what are the roots of migration and all these different questions. Right, the reasons really matter. And so like early on in the party, one of the classes that really like spoke to me was our origins of women's oppression class. And the reason it spoke to me is because it was basically saying like as socialists we have to study the economy. Like, and the economy is important. It's the foundation for how we live, and we shouldn't be intimidated by the economy. Like in this society where it's like there's all this jargon and like GDP, balance of trade, blah blah blah, and the whole idea is to throw a lot of jargon to blur the foundation, which is actually just about relations between people.
Yeah.
That is what economics is really about. But the idea that they're trying to intimidate us from paying attention to it and making it about, the interest rate, this and that, and just sort of like making it seem as if we can't understand this, leave economics experts, that is a weakness. And we have to actually like understand the relationships of production and how it is, why it is that our exploitation exists, and what it is about the system itself that replicates this oppression. And it also introduced me to history. And so like I knew early on, like I didn't believe that women were inferior. I didn't believe that this is just the way things are, and we have to accept this like humiliation by men and violence by men, and that we're not smart. I knew in my heart that that wasn't true, but I didn't have the historical foundation for it. And that's what I learned in the party, So like one of the things that was most impactful to me, it was the history. It was like if you were to look at human history, all of human history, and you were to condense it into one calendar year, right? 365 days. Our society would only be 10 days.
Wow.
Capitalism would be less than one.
Wow.
Right? So for the rest of human history, 200,000 years of human history, class society is, 5,000 years. And capitalism is 400 years. That's a small amount when you think about all of human history. 99% of human history, we've lived in communal, collective societies where women weren't unequal and weren't treated in this disposable way, where our labor wasn't devalued. Like, so the idea that women's oppression has existed always, will always exist, that patriarchy existed for thousands of years. Well, it's existed for thousands of years, 5,000 years. But when you consider that human history is 200,000 years, then you realize, well, it's not that much, is it?
Yeah.
So if something has a starting point, then that means it can have an ending point.
Yeah.
That to me was so powerful. It showed the idea that things can change, that things are always changing. In fact, that's very different from the ideology that we're taught, which is that this is how it is, this is how it's always been, this is how it's always going to be.
Yeah.
And then you realize, you study a little bit of history and you realize, no, actually, it hasn't always been like this. It's been like this for this amount of time. And we don't have to accept this idea that the vast majority of us are going to suffer and be dragged to our unnecessary humiliation because to make a few billionaires rich.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's not actually. So I think that lineage of Marxism, of studying political economy, that made me more interested in learning more about the world, about history. It as a weapon that I could use to understand the world that I was living in, and also something to strengthen the arguments that we're making about why it is that things can change. I know in my heart things can change, that our people don't deserve this humiliation, that we deserve healthcare, we deserve all these things. But the idea that it's just not possible, it can't happen. When you start to study the economy, you see how much of a lie that is. Because we already know we have more than enough wealth to provide for healthcare, housing, education, sanitation, for the world. Not just people in this country, for the whole world, right? right? And when you start to get those numbers, the $1 trillion every year spent on unnecessary, endless war, that's all these big insurmountable problems that you're told that's just the way it is. Homelessness, just the way it is. Childhood poverty, just the way it is. You realize, no, it doesn't have to actually be that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's only because of this system that we're living this way.
Yeah.
Because we have all of the technology, we have all of the people skills, the creativity to transform this system. We don't have to have poverty. We don't have to have homelessness. These problems are solvable, but they're not solvable by this clique of depraved billionaires who run the society now. That doesn't have to be the case forever.
Yeah.
Things can change. Things are always changing. But they're changing because of people struggling, because of people's power, people's movements. They're not changing because of this or that Democrat. No.
Yeah.
It's the actions of working class people that actually make the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious because I think a lot of people maybe understand capitalism is evil. These problems are avoidable, right? But I think what you're speaking with is with such a certainty that not only things can change, but that they will change. And so I'm curious kind of like, was that the study of liberation movements and workers' movement? Like, how did you, and maybe it's because I'm in academic circles a lot where all people do is think and not do. But like the transformation from, and the jump from, you know, having this Marxist analysis to then believing and practicing and, you know, living out this inevitable change that you're talking about, change for the better that you're talking about.
Like why are we so confident about the struggle and that we can actually have a socialist society? So like, where does our confidence come from? Our confidence comes from our study of capitalism, the system. What are its weaknesses and what are the patterns that seeing that it's very productive, right? You can't deny that, right? And that is also one of its weaknesses, is that now it's reached a point where there is so much waste, where the productivity itself is actually hurting us. And it's not just in the waste. The overproduction affects us in so many different ways that we actually live in a society where, you know, it's like billions of pounds of food every year is wasted. The productive capacity of our society is so high. Like, I think when I was in Texas, I shared this graph, this like productivity graph, and it showed from the 1970s to now, productivity has exponentially grown. It's just, you know, and the wages have not.
Yeah.
The wages are completely stagnant. And so all of that extra wealth that we're generating with less labor, it's all just going into the hands of a few billionaires.
Yeah.
So there's all this potential. There's all this potential that's being wasted by the system. And in so many different ways. You think about, like, you know, the Moderna vaccine. That was created over a weekend. It took 2 days to create that vaccine. All the rest was testing. But it actually took a couple of days to do that. And then at the same time, even though we're able to create this vaccine, because of the system of capitalism, because they have to make money off of this vaccine, millions of people are denied it. And even though the people who create the vaccine have benefited from public information, right? From publicly funded institutions, they're able to privately take that wealth and deny millions of people a life-saving vaccine. And that's where, like, the political economy comes in, right? The politics, it's not just the economic system, but the political system, too, that makes this impact. So on the one hand, we live in an extremely productive society where all of these, like, problems can actually be solved, and there is, like, more than enough resources to go around. And then on the other hand, we're being, like, just dragged by this, like, tiny little group of billionaires, right? And I think for me, what has made me more confident is actually going through some of the difficult experiences of being a working class mom in this country. Made me more confident in the class. Like, and I mean the hard stuff, you know, because like you know what it's like to be a mom, right? It's like you're like completely isolated in a lot of ways. You know, you're forced to, if you've ever had to take care of a baby by yourself, you know, like this is not the way our species evolved. Like, evolved it to be one person, one exhausted person to one
Yeah.
baby. It's like 4 to 5 adults. Like
Mm-hmm.
the way we actually evolved as a species was in collective, like in community with lots of people. Going through some of these experiences of both having a baby in this country, having a C-section in this country, being denied care when you need it, all the humiliation that goes along with that, going through miscarriage, going through abortion, going through, you know, having to take your kid to the emergency room, right? And being at the whim, having these corporations like take advantage of you when you're at your most vulnerable.
Yeah.
Going through those experiences actually like makes me more confident, because it just reminds me like, man, our class is tough. Like, I'm barely getting a taste of some of these things that my grandmother and all these millions of working class women go through. And like, they go through that and more.
Yeah.
They go through that and more. And yet they still are able to survive and thrive and figure things out. But like, I guess some of those oppressions honestly just made me more confident about like our class's ability to overcome a lot of obstacles, because you think these are all things that we do. We're stronger than them. Yeah. These are things that we do just to survive all the time. You know? And obviously the fact that we already do everything in society. Yeah. And this isn't me being ideological. Like, this is a fact. Like, we saw it through COVID. The billionaires didn't matter. The CEOs didn't matter. The farm workers mattered. The sanitation workers mattered. The nurses mattered. Like, all of those working class jobs, the jobs that were denigrated in the past, those became essential jobs. And it was so clear for the people who actually make society run. And it's really a political question of consciousness. Are we able to build a socialist consciousness in this country so that we can go beyond what the scraps, the breadcrumbs that they want to give us, and say, no, time's up. Time's up. Like, we actually need to run things ourselves, and we can run things ourselves. Yeah. And I think like the campaign actually helped me see that even more. I already believed and had experiences, but going to all these different states and meeting all these activists, nobody's paying them to be there, and they're coming up with solutions. You know, they're like talking about the problem of water in California and the problem of the data center. They're fighting against them, and they're winning. All around the country, these data centers that we're being told are inevitable, gonna happen no matter what. We're in this thing. Not so fast, says Georgia. Not so fast, says Arizona, Tennessee, Texas. People are stopping them. Yeah. So all the things that like they want us to focus on some bullshit, and we gotta focus on like what the people are doing to improve their own situation.
Yeah. I'm curious because also the system, so, you know, via the duopoly, the two-party system, right? They want us to think that there is just one clear enemy, that's the party, but our party is better. But I think with these data centers, with what you're saying, and I think from my time being in the South too, all of those preconceptions have really kind of come down to the ground, right? Like it and I've seen and I understand the capacity for solidarity beyond these partisan lines that they're talking about. And I'm curious, like you've done speaking tours in different parts, and you've done organizing in different parts of the country. And even with, again, these data centers where I'm hearing and seeing that it's like rural, poor, working class white folks who maybe voted for Trump, right? You know, and they don't want a data center in their backyard. And so I'm curious, like how you see people organizing beyond this duopoly they're trying to shove down our throats.
I mean, that's it. They want to put us in blue and red, and you are in your blue and red states, and that's not like, we don't live to make excuses for the Democratic Party. Yeah. That's not what we were put on this earth to do. So in fact, like, we have more in common with people who had voted for Trump even than we do with the elite Democratic Party politicians at the top, completely and without any hesitation. That is a fact, right? Because the truth is that the Democratic Party has been selling people out for decades. They think they own us. They've been selling out our community for decades, but they've been selling out poor white people in places that have suffered from deindustrialization all over the Rust Belt for decades. And so you can't, go to them, and when there's, 1,000, they've lost thousands of jobs under Democratic Party politicians. And then, like, they're all struggling for a few thousand jobs at the dollar store, right? The Dollar Tree. Like, those are people who have gone through the humiliation of capitalism. They've been sold out by these Democratic Party politicians too. So if they voted for Trump, a lot of those people would have voted for Bernie. That's
Yeah.
most people would have voted for Bernie. So if we allow ourselves to be identified as like and focus on maintaining the Democratic Party, no, that's not the vehicle. We're trying to build something completely different. We're trying to unite working class people on the basis of their actual struggles. And we don't have to sell them this idea that voting for us or anybody else every 4 years is the solution, because it's not. It's so clearly not. Our problems are so much bigger than every 4 years making between these two people. We know the system is rigged. Millions of people know it. Only in this situation, like, Trump has been, his approval ratings are in the gutter right now.
Yeah.
But so are the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
This is like has to be one of the only places in times in history where the opposition is not more popular, right? But it's because they don't do anything. Like Claudia says it best: if they're not playing dumb, they're playing dead.
Yeah.
And so, like, with the different crises that we're facing with climate change, with whether it's like the flooding, like, you see, it's always working class people who are helping each other.
Yeah.
Always responders.
Yeah.
Right. And so for us, it's important for us to be those, to keep being those first responders. Like, our people are generous.
Yeah.
We had to get organized, and we had to build independent of both political parties. So we're proudly building the PSL, independent working class organization, and we're not gonna fall for this lesser of two evils nonsense. We're not we're not. We're doing something else. Something else completely. And our intervention in the camp was to be able to talk to all those millions of people who don't even think they should vote at all, because they already know that that's not the vehicle. That voting for Democrat or Republican has not changed the conditions of their communities. We're saying, we're not telling you that this system is going to do it. We're saying we need a new system. The only people who are going to do it are working class people. Because we're the people who make society run. And let's build an organization that's ours, with our politics, and fight for what's ours. We're going to win by getting organized through the strength of our organization. And those are concrete things that we do every day. That's not dogma, not vapid. It's like we're humbly and sincerely working in our communities on the whole slew of issues, and saying, like, let's not do this piecemeal. Fight for everything. Let's fight for everything. And we actually need a whole new system.
Yeah. It's in the everyday struggle, not in every 4 years, every 2 years. I'm not in PSL, but I consider myself a friend of PSL. And yeah, that's the sense I get, that like it's using moments like elections, when people are paying attention, to build the momentum, the consciousness, the political power, and get people integrated into political organization. I have to ask, as a New Yorker, for you, how did PSL have a position on Mamdani, or like, I don't know, you can't really, I feel like, think about New York without thinking about Zoran.
Look, the more people are interested in talking about socialism, that's important. We want to talk to those people.
Yes.
And we're going to keep organizing under whoever is the mayor, right? And obviously there's opportunities with progressive mayors. In this case, somebody who identifies as a socialist. We'll see. Right? He has challenges. A lot of significant challenges. But we don't spend our time talking down about, any particular party or organization. To the contrary, like, we want to work with people who want to organize, and we want to keep fighting for, they mentioned about, like, the Rent Guidelines Board, about making life more accessible, to the extent that Mamdani is able to pass things that improve life for working class people. That's all, like, ammunition that we can use in this city and across the country to say that socialism is about the people. It's about improving our lives. And we don't think we're going to do that without a struggle.
Of course,
But it's important to be able to work with many progressive forces on the things that we agree with. And time will tell. We'll be able to see how far he's able to go, and we're going to keep struggling basically regardless.
Yeah. I'm curious also, I mean, you mentioned earlier that you joined PSL when it was very few people. And so obviously you have been part of its incredible growth in New York City and across the country. I would love to hear a little bit about, I mean, I definitely want to get to your mothering, but I feel like you also in many ways have been part of this collective mothering of this movement. I don't know if you see it that way, but like what has it been like? How have you seen it change and evolve? How has it radicalized you being part of this movement for so long?
Well, I think it's important to kind of always ground yourself in like, we're all trying to make a contribution, right? And like, my contribution is going to be different at different points in my life, but I can always make a contribution, and I always have to. Like, we have to struggle to make time for our political projects that we care about in our lives. And we have to have an organization that is mature enough to be able to accept and bring in people of many different backgrounds and experiences and actually walk with them through life's different challenges.
Yeah.
And be a space where we have mothers and we have students and we have elders and we have children, and that all of those people's contributions are valued, and that people are able to make a contribution in their life, like at any point, right?
Yeah.
And that those contributions are going to be valued. And so I think, like, for me, in the experience of being in the party when I was a younger organizer and having a lot of time, like being the one to organize the meetings and put out the chairs and make the events, right? Whereas now, when after I had my first baby, the situation is difficult, right? Just to be able to get to the meeting. You know, like I was thinking about May Day. May Day, man, my kids put me through it on May Day. I was like determined to go, but it was a struggle, you know, for real, because, you know, like the event is there's one rally happening at 2, there's one happening at 4. The baby needs to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm not a tired, hungry toddler to an outdoor protest with like all these people. Already she doesn't really like big gatherings, so I'm already having to figure out how to keep her comfortable, but definitely not. So just getting to the protest was like, it's hard, right? And so in that sense, having the experience of doing that and being that person, it also sensitizes you to see that, right? That when you see that woman coming with the stroller, you know it was hell. You know how hard it was to get there. Making it, you know, even more valuable. Not that some person's time is more valuable than another's, but when you have just a couple hours a week and you spend those couple hours with the party, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is important for people to really value that.
Yeah. So you've been organizing with PSL through all these different life stages. It sounds like ever since you were a younger person when you moved to New York. And so I'm curious for you, then when you did become a mom, was it hard to acclimate? And I ask this because I think for me, I did not expect, obviously, the isolation of becoming a mom, but I didn't expect my like activist organizing life to become isolated in the way that it did. And I didn't expect, you know, love to all the to my community here and to comrades. But I mean, I obviously didn't anticipate my own needs. So of course, other folks without kids are not going to anticipate that, you know, and I just didn't expect the isolation and how that was really something for me to grieve. I think the estrangement I felt from community work and organizing.
Definitely. I definitely felt that for sure with my first daughter, and I'm in it now too. You have to be able to talk about these challenges, right? And you have to have comrades that are able to both appreciate and have the sensitivity about these questions to be able to understand like what it means to get there. Like now it's a meeting, you know what I mean? A rally, right? Whereas like before it was the person going to all of the things and doing all of the things. And now it's like, but we also, because we're an organization that's multi-generational, that is very important, right? And working class, that we can have that sensitivity to working class people and the realities of our lives, right? To be able to understand the phases that we're going to go through. We're not going to be 20 forever.
Yeah.
And how do we hold on to people even in those times where they're not able to make the same contribution that they were before?
Yeah.
But what I learned is that now I have a lot of experiences that are actually really important, that it connects to millions of working class people in a different way. Like my roots in my own community are deeper as a result of having a child who goes through our school
Mm-hmm.
and who goes to the public school, right? And
Mm-hmm.
spending the time in my neighborhood, in the playground, knowing
Hmm.
where the public library, all the
Yeah.
different services that exist in the neighborhood, like those experiences are really important. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think because of the party we don't think of leadership development in just like a spontaneous way.
Mm-hmm.
We are very thoughtful about having a combination of both formal education, yes, classes, but also informal education too, which is like, it's really more of like a mentorship, a conversation, a dialogue that is sort of, you have to do the work of like looking in the mirror and thinking about your contributions, and then you can also feel the understanding and support of people who lived similar situations, right, who are
Mm-hmm.
grounded in the working
Mm-hmm.
class, so that when I was at my most vulnerable, definitely feeling like I feeling like I lost my voice, even honestly, because I wasn't coming to the meetings and I wasn't keeping up with everything that's going on, and so I just felt like I don't have anything to contribute in this meeting, like
Mm-hmm.
legit feeling like that, and having other comrades that know me, that understand me, and having a deeper understanding of myself too, and seeing that the solution is not to isolate even more. It's in fact to try to stay together, stay connected. Even
Yeah.
if it's you're connected to a person, you're
Yeah.
connected participating in an event, figuring out, how could you be a source of information and
Yeah.
experience to share with other comrades who have the time, a different kind of time, to be able to make the most of what we each have now. That it's not actually a hindrance. It's a good thing that we have people with different experiences to be able to speak to the class about all of the experiences, because you can't if you haven't lived through some of these challenges that we go through as a class. It's difficult to be able to relate,
Yeah.
but to be able to have a party with people from all ages with these different experiences, that makes a big difference. And
Yeah.
then for myself to understand that, for me, I am I'm not the first person to speak at a meeting. I know that probably sounds weird because I was doing a speaking tour, but like I get inspired by I listen to what every person in the room in the meetings. Those things feed me, like listening to what everybody is saying and hearing the connections. Those things inspire me to speak, to either share something or bring together what I hear in the meeting. That those are the things that inspire me. So more, instead of going outward more, it's like, no, go in, even if it is just this meeting, and even if you don't say
Yeah.
anything in that meeting, stay connected to the people.
Yeah.
Don't allow yourself to be isolated, because isolation is a recipe for depression and cynicism.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's worth fighting, try to fight through it, understanding our own limitations,
Yeah.
but seeing these experiences as like very valuable.
Yeah.
They connect us in a
Yeah.
way that's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that. And I hear you saying that, to allow ourselves to stay in community when we or others are going through the different contexts of a life cycle, frankly, and the unpredictability of a life cycle, and how, the structures want us to stay isolated and depressed and cynical. But yeah, continuing to lean into those connections. And I think also for me, it was like allowing my contributions to evolve and look different in different seasons. Like you said, we're not going to be 20 years old forever, thank God. And like it's our contributions and the gifts that we can offer they have to change.
Like I've been, taking care of my daughter full time now. It's such a different experience. It's from my first daughter that I had her. In 3 months, she already had a babysitter. I went back to work, and then this time, just with life, the way our situation worked out, I ended up full time taking care of my daughter, and just thinking about how much this system. On the one hand, I'm like grateful for the experience of being with her every day by myself, because I feel like this is, again, millions of working class women do this. And, you can't know it until you do it, And at the same time, like, the isolation is hard. It's really hard. And so I think, I don't know, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is how, in terms of parenting, I guess being able to read different books now in this second time around. And we were reading this one book, Hunt, Gather, Parent, which I think is just such an interesting book. She's not a Marxist, but she has really a materialist analysis
Interesting.
of how it is that we got here. Yeah, with parenting. It's interesting because, like, you're sort of, the illusion is that the parenting advice in this country is like science-based and modern. And it's a total illusion. It's not true at all. She goes and does the research. She like traces it back to like a few pamphlets written by these like male doctors who were the same doctors who would tell women like, don't rock the baby, you're gonna spoil it. You don't feed the baby until to every 3 hours, and you learn about the context that they're writing these parenting books. It's like they're doing it in the context of like a hospital where there's 100 babies, and they're very much don't have time for each one, and that's the advice that they're giving to women. People who've never really raised or spent time with kids are saying, put the baby down, they go to sleep, and they're going to learn their lesson. I guess it's made me reflect about my own life, which I thought in some ways was like, you from the outside you could be like, oh, it's this big sob story, like you lost your mom when you were little, you guys were like poor or whatever this. And now I think back and I'm like, man, I had a good life actually. Like I had cousins, I had aunts and uncles always. They were living with us. Like in fact, the experiences of even being around my grandmother and going around reading this book, Montessori method, all about like having real like lived experiences and exposure to language and exposure to the adult world and experiences with real things, right? It's not really about having all these toys or getting a lot of praise even, that it's really about being connected to your family and making a contribution. And now I'm sitting back and seeing all these different aspects of how my family raised me. I'm like, damn, this is actually, we actually do.
You all did Montessori, and now they're trying to sell it back to you for expensive. No,
for real. These we actually do these things, and we turned out better than these like upper middle class kids who were given everything and are not kind, not helpful, and don't have any life experiences. So in fact, like the being in our class, it's also a recipe for our own kind of creativity, and it makes sense, like the social solidarity that we still have, that we've been able to hold on to, even as we're deprived a lot of things by society. Our families still have like raised us right.
No, I totally hear that, and I was thinking about this when you were talking about growing up with your grandmother too. And I'm not trying to do like the devil's advocate thing. That's annoying, and I don't do that. But I'm curious because I feel like there is this capitalist co-opting of like immigrant working class resilience and strength that we're talking about. And I feel like I hear people, especially maybe in like neoliberal or like higher education circles, it ends up becoming like look what this family was able to overcome. And then it becomes like another way to blame the poor, actually. And another way to like just uphold this capitalist work ethic or this strength that immigrants have. And so I'm curious, like, do you ever come across that? Because I also come across, people in my own family and community who are like, yeah, we had these structural barriers, or we were immigrants, but we were able to like embody this and pass this on to our children. If other people aren't exhibiting that, then it's the fault of the individual, right? As opposed to like a structural materialist analysis, understanding that that's not actually what's happening. And so, yeah, I'm curious, like, if you had any thoughts on that, or if you see that at all.
Oh, definitely. I think it's so important. I'm glad you mentioned it too, because it's true, the question of resiliency, and it's like, well, why should we have to overcome all these unnecessary ridiculous obstacles? Like, we actually shouldn't. But I guess for me, it's more thinking like, damn, if we could do this despite all these obstacles, imagine we could do without them. That's how I think of it. For me, that's what makes socialism so possible. That's why it makes it so, I'm so confident about our class's ability to govern. It's because like we've been doing all this stuff under these ridiculous barriers that are unnecessary, and we've still been surviving from it. Like, imagine if we get rid of all those things. Like, there's nothing that can honestly stop us. Like, from one generation to the next, we're already able to do, there's nothing special about these billionaires. I guess that's the thing. There's nothing special about them, or that makes them so so important to society, that we have to accept all the conditions they put on us, because without them, what would we do? No, not at all. We don't need them at all. And we're able to catch up to them in one generation. So
Yeah.
imagine what we could do if we were in power, right? We
Yeah.
wouldn't spending our time making worthless barriers for people. We'd making it easier for people to get an education.
Yeah.
One thing that the right does is that they try to pit workers against each other, right? And so it's sort of like you see industries like coal or big oil, and they try to put the oil workers against the communities that are being poisoned by, or their lives are being destabilized by these industries. Whereas a socialist government would say no. Other working class people would say no. Like, we have to make sure that the who are working in this industry that is now really destroying our communities,
Yeah.
we have to see what other skills do they have.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
other
Yeah. Yeah.
education do they need? It doesn't have. We don't have to allow ourselves to be pit against the future, right? Because there's other things that people could be educated to do other things. People can move. People can have different jobs. There's no reason why we should be attached to these roles we should allow our own unions even to put us at odds with our community, because we can actually solve these climate problems and to develop in ways that are sustainable, that are actually improving our lives. And there's so many things that we can do in this society.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying of if survival wasn't like the main thing that we had to do and get through. Like, imagine the actual innovation, like not the extractive innovation, but like the art, the solving just basic problems in our communities, which I hear what you're saying, that we actually are already doing those things. So yeah, so beautifully said. Thank you so much. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Last thing.
No, please keep going.
I feel like we talk about capitalism so much and all the problems, and I just feel like before I leave, I want to talk about socialism.
Yeah, please.
What a socialist reconstruction of society would do for working class people. Like we already said, we have the wealth and the resources. We have the people and the creativity.
Yeah.
It would really be about having a democratic organization of society where we would figure out what are the priorities, and then we wouldn't all be suffering from the same preventable problems. Like we already know how difficult it is to raise a newborn baby. So why should somebody who just had the baby but got out 3 days later be on their own? That's what happens in this country. You have your baby and then you're on your own. No, we could have doctors coming to visit. We could have that lactation consultant coming to visit you. You could have spaces where we're able to, instead of having to all buy the same strollers and things, we could be able to borrow them, rent them, find other ways to be able to get goods out. Like watch the Queer Eye for a Straight Guy. How they do the Fab Five and they come to these like different working class women and they're like people who are working really hard for their community, but they never have time for themselves. Guy does like clothes, and one guy cooks up their apartment, and one guy does
food. Just
conversation, food, all those things. Like we could have socialist projects like that. Absolutely. Our resources to go to our own communities and say, let's keep this community up. Let's use all this money we've been spending on war to update this house. We're gonna help you update this house. You don't have to live here anymore. Like there's just so much human potential that's squandered in capitalism that makes us all have to face the same problems over and over again on our own. Whereas we all need childcare, so we should just have beautiful childcare centers and free. We all need healthcare. We're all going to get sick. We should just go to the doctor when we need to go to the doctor, and we shouldn't be dying from preventable diseases. So that's what socialism is. It's actually just looking at the resources and making decisions and saying like, we're interconnected. What happens locally, nationally, we're all interconnected. Are we going to allow a few tech billionaires to use up our precious water to cool down their servers? I mean, this is literally what they do. They go to the desert, and they're trying to create their data centers there. They don't give a damn about the people. And all those communities that look at their water reserves, their wells, like it's already happened where people don't have water, and they're living with water bottles and all these different piecemeal solutions. People shouldn't be having to deal with these things alone. We could have a socialist economy where it's planned, where we decide we're not going to put data centers in the desert right?
Yeah.
Or we're not going to do these data centers at all.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to focus on the things that we need. We need infrastructure, we need public schools, we need childcare, we need healthcare. We're going to put our resources to that. And instead of sending people to go and die in some war against people they don't even know, we
Yeah.
can have people living here,
Yeah.
reconstructing the society, right? Providing for new bridges, infrastructure, actually building things,
Yeah.
not just, pursuing this short-term project of artificial intelligence to
Yeah.
put us all in poverty and create this condition where we're slaves to a few billionaires.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. For AI projects that continue to take people's jobs away. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I'm curious, just as we wrap up, do you have any, I totally, hear what you're saying, that like this needs to happen in an institutionalized, planned way, these socialist problem solving endeavors. And I'm curious for you in your personal life, either with the party or just in your community in general, how you practice socialism, maybe in like an interpersonal way or like in the interdependence that you're talking about.
Well, I think I do it through the party. I think people do it through a lot of different organizations. Maybe they do it through their church, or maybe they do it through, one organization that they're part of. I do it through the party. And through the party, we're able to punch above our weight because we are able to act in a united way. Like, the biggest strength that we have is that we don't have to, we have a political program that we learn and we study, and then we have our unity about it, right? So when October 8th happens, we don't have to say, well, do we support the Palestinian right to live? What's our position about Palestinian liberation? We don't have to ask that. We know what our position is about Palestinian liberation.
Yeah.
We can act. We can get out in the streets and say, no, not another nickel, not another dime, no more money, right? No more money for this genocidal government, right? And we want to use our resources for jobs, education, housing, childcare. Boom. Those are the things that we want to spend money on. We don't want these wars. We don't want this, needless suffering. So I think through the party is where I'm able to do that, by being able to participate in the areas and take up tasks that are needed, and working with comrades from around the country even at times.
Yeah.
Able to have this collective project that we're all a part of.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love what you said about, I think you used the words punching up, right? That by being in a party or in an organization, there is an efficiency to the politics of what we're talking about. And I think about that too, right? Like I'm trying to do different, neighborhood things. My goal this year is to try to initiate a little free library by our playground in our neighborhood, things like that. And then I also think about the value also of being in a coordinated, larger effort. Because that's great if my neighborhood has one. But again, we need libraries are literally shutting down in Texas because of the madness happening in the Houston school district, and I think just the balance of the community and then the larger institutional urgency to address these issues. But I appreciate you naming those different things and the capacity for when you're in a party to punch up, like you said. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bianca. I appreciate
Thank you. I appreciate this conversation a lot. And just your time. You did mention that you're the primary caregiver for your daughter, so I don't underestimate the labor it takes to figure out childcare, because it's a lot. This is an oracle deck called the Morning Calm Oracle. It's by this Korean diasporic shaman named Seo Choi, and so I'll just pull a card for you, and you can respond if you want. Not required, but this card is called Goblin Play.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'll read the description that she writes, and then there's a little affirmation. But Goblin Play is about being playful, having trickster energy, and seeking fun and pleasure. While thought to be fierce and powerful, Korean goblins were also believed to be playful and fun. They are quite the tricksters, punishing and rewarding humans as they see fit through playful, magical spells. You are being asked to channel more of this playful, fun energy. Too much seriousness and strife can backfire on your ability to manifest. When you feel stuck, inviting more free-spirited, playful, light energy is exactly what you need. And there's an affirmation that says, I am free, playful, and light. I manifest easily and powerfully.
Oh my God, that is so perfect for me. I need
Really?
that. Yes, really true. This is the thing that I need to do more in my life. And I appreciate it. happens and my children teach me it,
Yes.
I'm going to do it more, and thank you for that.
Yes, you're welcome. Well, I wish you lots of play this weekend.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do, Bianca. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Karina. If you resonated with this conversation, would you rate 5 stars, follow, subscribe, share with your friends? We're at Mothering New Worlds on podcasting platforms, Substack, Instagram, YouTube. This is an independent podcast by me, Bianca Mabute-Louie. Music for this podcast was composed by Zarina Jimenez, and the logo was designed by Vanita Agrawal. Catch you next week.